No Last Word with Lawrence O'Donnell starts right now. Hey, Lawrence.
Hey, Jen, we're going to go to Ali Velshi and get some of the latest news in the election results. And it's not just Maine tonight. There's a lot out there.
Certainly not.
We're going to get right to it.
Sounds good. Have a great show.
Thanks, Jen. Well, 19,812 people were in Madison Square Garden last night to watch the most exciting basketball game played in that arena in the 21st century. And only one of those people fell asleep. And possibly because Donald Trump seemed to be sleeping on live TV, Iran decided that last night, while Donald Trump was attending that basketball game, it would be a good time to shoot down a U.S. Army Apache helicopter. We will get to all of that and more in a moment. But first, let's check in with Ali Velshi on tonight's election results. Ali, what's the latest? I guess we don't have Ali Velshi. We thought we had him. We might get him at some other point in the program. I want to turn also to Donald Trump's trouble with judges and now trouble with grand juries. This is a transcript from a Chicago grand jury in which the grand jury was repeatedly refusing to indict protesters who the Trump prosecutors were trying to accuse of being in a criminal conspiracy in their protests against Donald Trump's ICE invasion forces in Chicago. This is directly from the grand jury transcript. It is rare for us to have a grand jury transcript, but because of the strange procedures in this case, this grand jury transcript has been released. And here it is. Grand juror, are you actually presenting any new actual facts or just a different viewpoint on your side? Ms. Mecklenburg is the prosecutor. Ms. Mecklenburg says, okay, I'm feeling the skepticism already. Are you going to be able to listen with an open mind? Tell the truth. The grand juror said, I know. To which prosecutor Mecklenburg said, okay, then you have to go. The grand juror said, I heard this case like last week, and I thought it was a crock of crap. I'm going to clean it up to crock of crap then, and I think it still is. Okay, thank you for your opinion. So that is what grand juries have been doing to Donald Trump's prosecutors around the country as they bring their ludicrous cases. It's not just federal judges who have also been ruling against Donald Trump. Iran and the rest of the world have known for days that Donald Trump was scheduled to go to last night's basketball game. And so, possibly as a way of highlighting to Americans just how not on the job Donald Trump is during the war that Donald Trump started, Iran chose last night to shoot down a U.S. Army Apache helicopter. The two crew members were quickly rescued in high-tech fashion by an extraordinarily effective Navy seagoing drone, a 24-foot high-speed vessel that rushed to that rescue. It was the first such rescue accomplished by this new Navy asset, which allows such rescue missions now to be conducted without any risk to a crew of a rescue vessel, which is very good news indeed to everyone in the Navy and families of everyone serving in the United States Navy. The United States conducted retaliatory strikes today in response to the attack on the Army helicopter last night. The New York Times reports, quote, 2 Iranian officials said that the airstrikes had targeted military bases and other installations, including artillery batteries. And the Trump administration issued a carefully phrased description of the retaliation, calling it, quote, a proportional response. A proportional response is what every president prior to Donald Trump used in such situations. Presidents were always very careful to avoid shooting wars whenever possible by choosing what the American military and the White House and diplomats have been calling, quote, a proportional response since the Vietnam War. It is a standard term of diplomatic art, exactly the kind of language you do not expect to hear from Donald Trump or anyone in his Department of Defense, which Donald Trump illegally calls a Department of War. Donald Trump is also the only president in history who has publicly threatened not only a disproportionate response, but actual war crimes by saying he would completely wipe out Iran if Iran did not reach a peace agreement with him within a couple of days. And those statements were, of course, several weeks ago. The couple of days never happened. The fact that Donald Trump obviously did not mean a word when he said all those threats about his self-imposed deadline for committing his threatened war crimes means that no one believes any of Donald Trump's deadlines, including his new one, 2 or 3 days. That's his new one. And the reason not to believe Donald Trump's new one is that Donald Trump himself retracted it right after he said it last night after the Knicks game before boarding Air Force One.
We're in the final throes of what will be a very, very good deal that will not allow in any way, shape, or form nuclear weapons, etc. And the Strait will open up right away. It'll open up immediately upon signing, which could be in 2 or 3 days.
You'll be signing a peace agreement?
No, we have a good chance of doing it. We should be able to do it in 1 hour, if you want to know the truth.
Here's a phrase I've never used. If you want to know the truth. I've also never said to tell you the truth. To tell you the truth is a very common phrase. It's actually a reflex a lot of people use. I just never have. If you want to know the truth is actually a stranger phrase, because who wouldn't? They are reflexive phrases for Donald Trump. He doesn't think about them. He doesn't think about what they mean. And in my own experience, and this is only my own experience, this is not social science, people who say to tell the truth, or the weirder version, if you want to know the truth, are frequently optional employers of the truth. You can search presidential press conferences and never find the phrase, if you want to know the truth, because the implication is the person saying that doesn't always tell the truth. It's one of Donald Trump's tics, if you want to know the truth. And every single time I have ever heard that man use that phrase, if you want to know the truth, he said it after a lie. We should be able to do it in 1 hour if you want to know the truth. We should be able to reach a complex peace agreement with Iran that would prevent Iran from acquiring nuclear weapons in 1 hour. The same person said in his interview last weekend with Meet the Press that this kind of negotiation takes years. That was Donald Trump's defense on Meet the Press for not having already negotiated a peace agreement. He said, quote, "It takes years to do these things." And so, yes, we want to know the truth, and we all know it's impossible to get that from Donald Trump about anything. And so Donald Trump says that it could be in 2 or 3 days. Those are his exact words. It could be in 2 or 3 days. A reporter simply repeats those words back to him. You'll be signing a peace agreement in 2 or 3 days. And Donald Trump immediately says, no. That's what we're dealing with. In the presidency, during wartime, that's what Iran is watching every day. That's the clown on the other side of the negotiations that Iran might or might not be engaging in with the United States. At 6:30 p.m. tonight, the Iranian dictatorship, which has never dealt with a more clownish person anywhere in the world than Donald Trump, issued this statement. Quote, "Despite its defeats on the battlefield, the U.S. opted to test our determination. Our powerful armed forces will leave no attack or threat unanswered. Leave our region if you want to be safe. History of the Persian Gulf has many chapters on dire fates of intruding outsiders." Nothing in the Iranian statement about 2 or 3 days. And so we've reached this extraordinary point in history. In a war Donald Trump started with Iran's dictatorship 102 days ago, Donald Trump has lied repeatedly every single time he has been asked when his war will end. And Iran has not lied once about when the war will end. And the Iranian regime is a horrible, murderous dictatorship. But Donald Trump has publicly lied more about his war with Iran than Iran has. The Democratic leader of the United States Senate, New York Senator Chuck Schumer, a lifetime born in Brooklyn Knicks fan, who was not able to go to the game last night because he has an important job in Washington, said, quote, American soldiers were shot down in Iran as Trump was wasting taxpayer dollars to fall asleep while watching the Knicks. Each day his illegal war drags on further exposes this president's recklessness. And presidential candidate James David Vance has decided that his presidential campaign will not be able to survive the same level of public lying on the record, on video, that Donald Trump does every day. And so in an interview with CBS today, J.D. Vance became the first vice president in history to publicly disagree with his president about when a peace deal could be achieved in a war that they are fighting.
I think that the deal could happen in the next week, but the deal could also happen months from now.
So J.D. Vance heard Donald Trump say 2 or 3 days last night. He knows that. And J.D. Vance refused to repeat Donald Trump's words today. And instead, Republican presidential candidate J.D. Vance stretched Donald Trump's 2 or 3 days to could happen in the next week, and immediately added a completely indefinite, open-ended timetable so that he can claim he never said when it would happen. J.D. Vance knows that he is creating sound bites to be used against him in his own presidential campaign, and that's why he said, quote, I think that the deal could happen in the next week, but the deal could also happen months from now. J.D. Vance just covered himself for any deal that happens or doesn't happen anytime for the rest of this year. And while he was at it, J.D. Vance avoided saying, if you want to know the truth. Leading off our discussion tonight is Congressman Adam Smith of the state of Washington. He is the top Democrat on the House Armed Services Committee. Congressman Smith, I know you have wanted to know the truth about things like, for example, how much does this war cost? How much of the truth do we know about this war tonight?
Not a lot. And look, all of the president's obfuscations and continual claims that a peace deal is at hand really obscures the basic reality of what's going on here. Trump stupidly started this war thinking that a 2, 3, 4 week bombing campaign would break the Iranian regime, that they would come begging for a deal and give us all of our terms. That didn't happen. Iran had an asymmetric advantage. All they had to do was survive and be able to inflict pain on the region, which they did. Ever since that moment, Trump has been stuck. He comes out, gosh, every other day now saying, we got a deal, it's tomorrow, it's next week, it's whatever. Please understand, there is no deal on the horizon. Iran's position right now is pay us to open the strait. That's it. They're not talking about nukes, they're not talking about terrorism, they're not talking about ballistic missiles. Trump is ignoring all of that. So please understand where we're at. We're stuck. The cost continues to go up, certainly the economic cost, as we see the price of gas and other commodities skyrocketing because of this war. And as you did a great job of explaining, Trump has no idea how to bring this to an end or no idea where he is actually going.
I do want to focus on this rescue, using this Navy drone, seagoing drone, because this is a breakthrough technology for a situation like that. And I know when you're on the Armed Services Committee, you're always being presented with these projects and these possible new assets that the military wants, and some of them can be questionable and some of them might look very promising. What was your reaction to that successful deployment of that rescue seagoing drone?
Yeah, it's really cool. I actually know the company. I've visited the company a couple times and made it. I saw that very thing being made off the assembly line down in Austin. And they've got that version of it. They've got a bigger version of it. This is a real opportunity for us to more cost effectively meet our defense needs. And again, not to keep coming back to criticizing Trump. Trump's talking about building a $22 billion battleship that has highly questionable utility when we have these small autonomous systems, and I forget exactly how much they cost, but really, really cheap and really, really effective. That's the future. That's how we can meet our national security needs, even in our tight budget environment, without blowing up to a $1.6 trillion defense budget. We've got cheaper missiles. We've got cheaper drones. We've got cheaper missile defense, cheaper drone defense, cheaper autonomous naval vessels. Companies out there are making investments, developing incredible technology. So it's exciting to see that part of it. Not as exciting that we're in this war and the helicopter got shot down, but at least we are demonstrating new and innovative and I think really important capabilities.
Congressman Adam Smith, thank you very much for starting off our coverage tonight.
Thanks, Lance.
Thank you. And coming up today, the House Oversight Committee interviewed a witness who directly connected Donald Trump to Jeffrey Epstein. That's next. Maine is not the only state counting votes tonight. Ali Velshi, what else is happening?
Lots of states, things that are going on. We got a lot of developments out of California that you know about, but I want to talk to you about South Carolina for a second. For the Senate Democratic primary, which is not something most people would be thinking about, Annie Andrews was declared the winner of that pretty early in the night. In fact, earlier. So we called the Democratic Senate primary candidate earlier than we were able to call the Republican Senate candidate, which is wild because the Republican Senate candidate is Lindsey Graham, the incumbent who is sort of stuck to Donald Trump. It's not quite sure what he's done to get on the wrong side of this thing, but he faced a challenger from his right who got 28% of the vote. Lindsey Graham at this point was 78% of the vote in. Only got 57.5% of the vote there. This is just an interesting story. Do with it what you will. Let's take a look at the gubernatorial primary as well in South Carolina on the Republican side. The winner here was 79% in. It's a runoff state, so you have to get more than 50%. Nobody got that because there are a lot of candidates. But the winner is Pamela Yvette. Pamela Yvette is the lieutenant governor. She got the Donald Trump stamp of approval. She's advancing with 29% of the vote. Alan Wilson is advancing with 26% of the vote. And you may be saying to yourself, who's Alan Wilson? Well, there are actually a couple of other interesting candidates, including Ralph Norman, who is a Republican congressman from the northern part of South Carolina. And look at that, not in fourth place, in fifth place, Nancy Mace with 11.8% of the vote. Nancy Mace largely, in fact, she claims to be the most MAGA candidate in the race, someone who is otherwise generally on Trump's side, fell out with Donald Trump over one particular major issue, the Epstein files, and she's not even making it into the top 5 in this race.
And Ali, we're going to get to the Epstein files right now in our coverage.
Thanks, Fred.
Thanks, Ali. Well, today, the House Oversight Committee heard testimony from a witness who connected Donald Trump to Jeffrey Epstein, literally.
Has President Trump come up at all?
His name has come up, yeah.
Did she talk about scheduling meetings between Mr. Epstein and President Trump?
Basically, arranging phone calls, I believe, was most of it. Just contact between, just arranging phone calls between President Trump and Mr. Epstein, yes.
Did she give a timeline on when they were talking?
I believe she referred to a time before Mr. Trump was president, that she did arrange for multiple phone calls between the two of them.
Today's witness, Leslie Groff, worked for Jeffrey Epstein for 18 years, beginning in 2001, a year after Leslie Groff started connecting phone calls between Jeffrey Epstein and Donald Trump. Donald Trump told New York Magazine, quote, "I've known Jeff for 15 years, terrific guy. He's a lot of fun to be with. It is even said that he likes beautiful women as much as I do, and many of them are on the younger side." In her written opening statement that she released publicly, Leslie Groff said, "I want to say without any doubt that I have come to believe the man who employed me from February of 2001 through July of 2019 was a monster. For 18 years, I worked for Dr. Jekyll, but was never permitted to see the true Mr. Hyde. Mr. Epstein was, in hindsight, a master manipulator and deceiver who separated his legitimate life from his secret life as an abuser and made sure that as his secretary, those two worlds did not collide. He had every reason not to tell me about his crimes. He had no leverage on me. Boston Congressman Stephen Lynch, who was in the room today, said this.
It is highly inconsistent what she's maintaining, that she really didn't know Jeffrey Epstein, even though she worked for him for 18 years. As well, she seemed to be very vague in her description about what Mr. Epstein was charged with when she went to work for him, shortly after she went to work for him. You know, he was a registered sex offender, and she arranged young women for massages with a registered sex offender. And I just question whether she can rightfully and truthfully maintain that she saw nothing improper in that. He was a registered sex offender and had to report. He had restrictions on his travel, who he had contact with. And he had to report his whereabouts to the court at a time when she was arranging massages for by those young women. And that does not sit well with her testimony.
And Congressman Lynch added more about the scheduling of those massages.
She scheduled, well, he would give her a name and numbers. She would schedule the massages.
Did she know about ages of maybe women who were under 18?
That's what, there's a point of contention on that. There are young women who say she knew, and that they told her that she was underage. And then she maintains that she was not fully aware of that. However, there's been some litigation around that point. I won't, I can't speak to that, but certainly there have been allegations that was the case.
Just to be clear, she's testified today that she knew she was booking massages for...
Oh yeah, she said she would get a slip, with a number and a name from Mr. Epstein, and she would arrange the massages.
Joining us now is Democratic Congressman James Walkinshaw of Virginia. He's a member of the House Oversight Committee and the House Homeland Security Committee. Congressman, thank you very much for joining us tonight. There seems to be a real credibility issue with this witness claiming not to be aware of the dark side of Jeffrey Epstein's life.
Yeah, look, I honestly don't know how any reasonable person could believe what she was saying today. She's his assistant for 18 years before and after he pleads guilty to a sex crime with a minor. She arranges massage after massage after massage, all performed by young women, by the way. And the idea that she had no knowledge of the abuse and the crimes that he was committing, I just don't think is remotely credible.
Was she saying that she actually never saw any of these teenage girls?
She did assert that most of those performing the massages she did not meet in person. We do know from the files that she received pictures of many of them via email as they were being evaluated by Mr. Epstein. So she certainly did see some of them.
Now, this is one of those interviews that they're being called interviews because apparently the witness was not put under oath. What is the point of that?
That's right. It's a transcribed interview. So while it's a crime to lie to Congress under any circumstance, she wasn't sworn in before the interview took place. And I think most importantly, from my perspective, from the perspective of Democrats on the committee, it was behind closed doors and the American people weren't able to see it, which has been a problem throughout this investigation. I think further erodes the trust that the American people have in this Republican-led investigation.
Congressman James Walkinshaw, thank you very much for joining us tonight.
Thank you, Lawrence.
And coming up, another federal judge has stopped another Trump illegal and unconstitutional tax. Yes, a tax. Remember when the Republicans were the anti-tax party. Donald Trump ended all that. That's next. An unlawful tax. That is what Donald Trump has been imposing until a federal judge in Boston stopped him yesterday. Remember when the Republican Party was the anti-tax party? Remember when every Republican member of Congress signed a pledge, they actually signed it, to never raise taxes. And now the Republican Party who signed that completely support Donald Trump illegally raising taxes through illegal tariffs that have now been refunded and through a $100,000 tax that they call a fee for employers to obtain visas for highly skilled workers like doctors, scientists, and tech wizards. Yesterday, federal judge Leo Sorokin in Boston said that Donald Trump's $100,000 fee on H-1B visa applications is another illegal and unconstitutional Trump Republican tax. The judge wrote, the substance and application of the $100,000 payment reveal that it is a tax, regardless of what the payment is called. The judge said exactly what the United States Supreme Court said in the tariff case, which is the power to tax belongs exclusively to Congress, according to the Constitution. Massachusetts Attorney General Andrea Campbell, who brought the successful case to block that Trump tax, said, today's victory protects the integrity of the H-1B visa program as a tool to address severe labor shortages in vital industries like education, healthcare, and medical research. In Massachusetts, this win will ensure that we can fill critical vacancies and hire world-class faculty and researchers at colleges and universities across the Commonwealth. And today, a federal judge in New York City, presiding in the Court of International Trade, said the time has come to ensure all of the duties are refunded. Those are his exact words. Judge Richard Eaton is presiding over the refunds of Donald Trump's illegal and unconstitutional tariffs. In a hearing today on the progress of those refunds, a Customs and Border Protection official estimated that they will have approved refunds of over $100 billion by the end of this month. And the only reason that is happening is that Judge Eaton has repeatedly ordered the Trump administration to fast-track the refund process, something Judge Eaton continues to actively police, much to Donald Trump's horror and confusion.
Sir, a federal judge today struck down the $100,000 fee for the H-1B visa, saying you need congressional approval. Are you going to push for Congress to do this?
These federal judges are really giving us a hard time. It's really crazy what's going on with the court system. They are giving us a very, very hard time, and they shouldn't be doing it. They're hurting our country very badly.
Joining us now is Congressman Brendan Boyle of Pennsylvania. He's the top Democrat on the House Budget Committee and a member of the powerful House Ways and Means Committee, which has jurisdiction over both taxes and tariffs. Congressman, as we know, it's actually written into the Constitution itself. Donald Trump would not know this, that your committee, the Ways and Means Committee, is the only place where tax legislation can be written. It must originate there before then moving to the Senate.
That's exactly right, Lawrence. It's right there in black and white in Article 1. And I'm very gratified that the U.S. Supreme Court, as well as these other lower-level courts, have all ruled against this president. The reality is his tariffs are taxes, and in fact, they are now the highest rate of tariff since the Great Depression. This represents almost an extra $2,000 the average American family has paid per year because of Trump's tariff taxes. So I'm doing everything I can to make sure this president follows the law and returns this money that he illegally took from the American people.
And Judge Eaton has had to drag Trump officials into court and force them to do what his order already requires them to do and what the Supreme Court decision in this requires them to do.
That's right. And, you know, the scenario that I think a lot of us have always been most concerned about is what would happen if this president just ignored a court decision, including ignoring a Supreme Court decision. He has not, on the face of it, gone that far, at least yet. But this is disturbing, the way he keeps ignoring these court decisions and is really being dragged kicking and screaming into doing the right thing, giving the American people their money back.
And not a single Republican in Congress really rising up against the Trump taxes.
No, of course not. They wouldn't dare violate the sacred words of their dear leader. But it's really amazing for anyone who has a memory of the Republican Party over the last 3, 4, 5 decades. I mean, remember George W. Bush running for president saying, it's your money, I want to give it back to you. Ronald Reagan talking about tariffs being a massive tax on the American people. All of that orthodoxy has been completely turned on its head. And every single Republican who knows better and used to say those things is, of course, going along with what Donald Trump now says.
Yeah, Republicans were as anti-tariff as they were allegedly anti-tax, and then Donald Trump came along. Congressman Brendan Boyle, thank you very much for joining us tonight.
Thank you.
And up next, Jacob Soboroff will join us with a new report on the record number of babies, yes, babies, that Donald Trump is holding in federal custody. That's next with Jacob Soboroff. Important new reporting from MS Now and the Marshall Project is exposing how many babies are being held behind bars by Donald Trump's Department of Homeland Security. Quote, since the Trump administration entered the White House last year, at least 500 babies and toddlers have spent some of that pivotal time in the custody of U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement. ICE has dramatically increased detentions of children aged 3 and under, holding 25 of them in custody on an average day between January 2025 and March of this year, according to a new analysis by the Marshall Project and MS Now of records obtained by the Deportation Data Project, a group of academics and lawyers who collect and share federal immigration data. That number is 10 times higher than it was in the previous 12 months under former President Joe Biden. Back then, on an average day, fewer than 3 babies and toddlers were held at facilities across the country. Parents in ICE detention have complained of substandard conditions that frequently left their young children sick, isolated, and regressing in their physical and intellectual development. Our next guest, MS Now's Jacob Soboroff, talked with 2 parents who came to the United States from Russia with their young son. They were seeking asylum to avoid prosecution because of their opposition to the war in Ukraine. Upon arriving in the United States, the family was sent to the ICE detention facility in Dilley, Texas. This is what they had to say.
You left Russia because you didn't want to go to prison, yet you get to the United States of America and you end up in a place that to you feels like a prison. What was that like for you?
We came here to escape prison. We wanted to be free. But once we arrived in America, we spent 4 months in detention.
4 months in detention.
118 days, to be exact.
Gotcha! It's crazy to hold your son like this and look at this beautiful child in the face and think that for 118 days, the 3 of you were locked up in a prison for families in the United States. I cannot imagine what it was like for you.
It was very hard not knowing when they would let us go, where we would go, or if they were going to deport us.
MS Now and the Marshall Project asked the Department of Homeland Security about these allegations, but the agency declined to answer specific questions after we refused to provide identifying information about our sources. DHS and ICE spokespersons did, however, provide statements dismissing the broader claims against Dilley as, quote, media lies, and saying conditions are, quote, safe, humane, and family-friendly. Joining us now is Jacob Soboroff, MS Now's senior political and national reporter. He is the host of the new show Connect with Jacob Soboroff, which is premiering this Saturday on this network. Jacob, just a shocking situation that this administration is pushing up that number of babies and children. And there is some amount of this that is an understandable product of these kinds of detentions. But every other presidency has tried to keep that number as small as possible.
Not only that, Lawrence, but during the Biden administration, the Dilley ICE family prison, and just let me say that one more time, we have a family prison in the United States of America for immigrants, was shut down entirely. It was closed. This administration reopened it for the sole purpose of detaining families and children. And now, according to this new data in this reporting that we have done with the Marshall Project, this is the first reporting partnership that we at MS Now and the Marshall Project have done. We have learned that 500 children under the age of 3 have been detained through March. So it could be more kids since March, since the beginning of the second Trump term. And what does that mean? It means lifelong trauma for these children. It means these children being held in conditions that all of these families that we have talked to have said, no adequate food, bedding was difficult, couldn't get the type of baby formula that they wanted, clean water for the children. Amir and Azat and this entire family, Al-Su, came here because they were fleeing persecution in Russia. And then they only ended up in the same type of prison in the United States of America that they thought they were avoiding in Russia when they opposed the war in Ukraine.
Were they, did they have the news of what Donald Trump was doing here available to them as they were coming to this country? How surprised were they about this?
What they understood was that once they came into the United States, they might be detained as they crossed the border to seek asylum. But under the landmark Flores Settlement Agreement from the 1990s, they should not be held there with their children, for more than 20 days. Many children during the Trump administration have been held well beyond the 20-day limit. And in fact, this family was held for 118 days with their little boy. Amir could only say the words mom and dad by the time he left there, had such an incredible regression in his development. The parents were worried that the child would never speak like a normal child again. And when I went to visit them in Sacramento, where they are renting a single room in someone else's house, it's the only place they can afford at this point, he started to show great progress. But these kids forever will be living with this. During family separation, we knew that this was, according to the American Academy of Pediatrics, government-sanctioned child abuse. That's what they said. And this is the next logical extension of that.
Jacob Soboroff, just invaluable reporting. We're going to take a break here. When we come back, I want to get the latest update on the California election, where we do have some news there tonight. We're going to be right back with Jacob Soboroff. Jacob Soboroff is back with us, and I think we have the latest numbers in the California governor's race. I think we have them on screen. Yeah, there they are. And we now see the Republican candidate, Steve Hilton, has been designated the finisher there at the number 2 spot, 88% of the vote in. It is going to be the Democrat versus the Republican in November. And Jacob, you're reporting last night from the voting center in Los Angeles, where they have all these glass walls built in anticipation of Donald Trump lying about the transparency of the way they count votes there. You had this great idea to say to Donald Trump, come on out here and walk around this place the way I do, because he could walk through it tomorrow, as his federal prosecutors already have, and found nothing wrong.
It is unbelievable to be in that facility and to hear from the local election officials in the largest election jurisdiction in the country, which is the main reason why we count votes particularly
More votes
slowly.
counted there than any other counting place in America.
More than 41 states. More votes than 41 states in the union in Los Angeles County. And Donald Trump is puzzled by why it takes a long time to count votes fairly and accurately. And these U.S. attorneys show up there and they say they're doing an investigation. They're not doing an investigation into anything. They're standing in the same public viewing area that I was standing in, or that you could go stand in, or anyone in this studio or anyone in Southern California could go walk in and watch as an election observer.
And all the U.S. attorney has done so far, actually, to his credit, is to completely eliminate a rumor that was out there that Spencer Pratt in one of the vote count updates got 0 votes, which would have been impossible. And he said, Donald Trump's U.S. attorney said, no, that's never happened. That didn't happen. That's false. So it isn't going well for Trump on the investigation. But have you figured out why, if the Democrats have rigged the California election, they rigged it so that the Republican would be on the ballot in November? Because I'm struggling with that.
It is unbelievable. To hear the conspiracy theories, what I witnessed was not a conspiracy, it was bureaucracy or democracy in action. And the reason that Spencer Pratt lost the mayoral election is because Democrats outnumber Republicans to an extraordinary degree in the city of Los Angeles. The reason Steve Hilton ultimately is not going to win the election in the general election is because Democrats outnumber Republicans to an extraordinary degree in the state of California. That is about it. We have a system that was pioneered, actually, vote centers in LA by a Republican county clerk in Larimer County, Colorado, Scott Doyle, in 2003. And that was exported to all these other jurisdictions throughout the country. Vote by mail and universal vote by mail was supported by Republican and Democratic election administrators for years before California adopted it. And I continue to hear from people on social media and the president and all these other conspiracy theorists that this is a democratic system enacted to benefit Democrats. That's not true. What is true is that there are more Democrats than Republicans in California and Los Angeles.
The network, of course, has an official process for calling elections, which I fully respect. However, in my unofficial process, the day after Election Day in California, I called the mayor's race in November for the Democrat.
Yes.
Whoever that, and Karen Bass was then going to be clearly the Democrat, possibly, and now we're going to have two Democrats, so
Correct.
It's easy to call it for the Democrat. And it's impossible not to call the governor's race for the Democrat. The unofficial call on this program right now for November is, Javier Becerra is going to be the next governor of California. But the national news media will spend some amount of time chasing Donald Trump's fake dreams that there's some possibility of the Republican getting somewhere in a state that is overwhelmingly Democratic. The Democrats don't spend a lot of time claiming that the Democrat is going to win in the Alabama governor's race. They don't spend a lot of time on that.
In Los Angeles, the idea that you have two Democrats now, Nithya Raman, the city council person of Progressive, and Karen Bass, the longtime congresswoman who has been the mayor now for almost 4 years, going up against each other is entirely plausible and probably what most people thought was going to happen. And the idea that Spencer Pratt even emerged in the conversation is largely based on social media and people from outside LA lifting him up in order to get him into the conversation. This is the outcome that most likely was going to happen, and sure enough, it did.
Jacob Soboroff, thank you very much for joining us tonight. We'll be watching Jacob's Connect with Jacob Soboroff premiering this Saturday at 10 a.m. right here on this network. That is tonight's last word.